Throughout the Legend of Zelda series, the titular princess has proven herself incredibly powerful. Whether or not she's able to contain or properly use that power varies from game to game, but regardless, she has enough power to turn even people into essentially gods. However, this power is rarely talked about and doesn't really have any explanation aside from it's because she's the reincarnation of Hylia. So today, joined by the wonderful Z Hyrule Fantasy, I'm going to be digging into the true nature of Zelda's power.
Hey, Z here, and I'll be helping Truth dig.
Once you finish this video, be sure to watch the other half of this collab over on his channel, where we show you how Hylia is the goddess of time. So Z, what should we explore first?
Well, I think the origin is just as good as any place to begin.
Alright then, take it away.
Obviously, we know that Zelda's powers stem from the fact that she is Hylia's reincarnation. However, this is not the full story. If you've watched Nintendo Black Crisis at all, you're likely aware of the existence of Force. Essentially, though in the localization of Zelda games, there is a distinction between the Light Force, Life Force, and Force Gems. In the original Japanese version, they're all simply referred to as Force. Now, according to the Ocean King from Phantom Hourglass, Life Force is a sacred power that every living being possesses. So, if all these different forces are actually the same, then it makes sense that the most powerful beings would have the most force. This is why villains have so consistently gone after more powerful beings' life force, hoping to steal their power, such as Bellum draining the Ocean King's life force, or with Vaati attempting to steal the light force from Zelda, and maybe even Demise consuming Zelda's soul in Skyward Sword.
That's right, we believe that all these occurrences are connected by the life force that exists within everybody. Given a high enough quantity of this force, anyone can drastically increase their power to the point of nearly becoming gods. So essentially, force is a powerful thing that can be traded or stolen to make people much stronger. Hylia's power, and hence Zelda's power, comes from this force, which is both why she's so powerful, and why she's frequently a victim of getting kidnapped for the use of her force. In case you aren't quite convinced, let's take a look at a few of the cases of villains attempting to steal the force from Zelda, so that we can see the parallels between them. At the very beginning of the timeline, all the way back in Skyward Sword, Girahim performs a ritual so that Demise can steal Zelda's soul, returning him to the powerful demon he was before his war with Hylia. In the next game, the Minish Cap, Vaati turns Zelda to stone and then performs a ritual in order to steal the light force from Zelda, still becoming an incredibly powerful being, despite the fact that he wasn't entirely successful in his efforts. Later on, in Phantom Hourglass, Bellum turns Zelda into stone to kidnap her so that he can steal her life force. In fact, every primary antagonist in the Zelda series attempts to use Zelda's force in one way or another, aside from Ganon or Ganondorf. While this is certainly curious, that's another topic for another day.
However, if you've played the Minish Cap, you see a slight problem with all this. When learning about the history of the Light Force, you learn that it was given to the royal family by the Minish. And though this is merely speculation, we do have a theory for this problem. At the end of Skyward Sword, the first story in the timeline, it's implied that everyone tried to go back to their normal lives. Link put the Master Sword back in the pedestal, Fi went back to her hibernation in the sword, and aside from the fact that Skyloft was now on the surface, life was normal. Except that it wasn't. Remember, Zelda is still Hylia incarnated. At this point, she has entirely become Hylia. And this makes it difficult for her to simply be a normal Hylian. So, like we learned earlier, force is a thing that can be traded between life forms. It's possible that Zelda gave the Minish her divine force to be kept safe in their realm until the Hylians would have need of it. And sure enough, when the Hero of Men arose, the Minish gave him the Bakori Blade and brought down the light force. Ever since then, it has been held by the Princess of Hyrule. Either that or it's possible the legends were just mixed up and the Bakori were credited for the princess's power due to ignorance and the passing of time. I guess that part isn't as satisfying of an answer, but it happens in real life all the time.
So now that we know where Zelda's power comes from, we should take a look at its evolution throughout the series. Zelda has always had a basic understanding of how to use her power, since she's able to do things such as granting Link light or silver arrows throughout the games. But in later games, she seems to show much more of a grasp over her power. Likely when Skyward Sword Zelda died or relinquished her power, she lost the part of her that was Hylia, so that she lost her more complete understanding on how to use her power, and so had to start from the beginning. In the Minish Cap, she didn't even know she had the Light Force until Vaati tried to take it from her. In Ocarina of Time, she was aware of it, but the most she could do was grant Link the light arrows. If we continue down the child timeline, we can see that in Twilight Princess, she has even stronger control. When she sacrifices herself for Midna, the most popular theory is that she gave her the Triforce of Wisdom. However, this in itself would not cause the princess to fade away, as we've seen people obtain and lose pieces of the Triforce with no consequences. The far more likely option is that she gave her the life force within her, hence why Midna states, "Zelda, I've taken all you had to give, though I did not want it." By the time we get to Breath of the Wild, Zelda's power is nearly back to its original form. Likely the reason for this is because of the more than 10,000 years between Breath of the Wild and the previous Zelda games. In this game, we see Zelda single-handedly wipe out an entire army of Guardians, hold off the Calamity for over 100 years, and finally seal off the Calamity after Link damages it with the light arrows.
Though every time we've seen Zelda tap into her power to manipulate time, she seems able to do it with ease, as if it comes natural. And that's probably because, like we established on the other part of the video, Hylia is the goddess of time. And in fact, this very Zelda who had so much trouble unlocking her power somehow was able to create a mini guardian when she was a child that is the only one that has special powers allowing it to travel through time. Terrico, from Age of Calamity. And whether you believe it's canon or not, it still shows a consistent correlation with Zelda and the element of time. But despite all of her power, Zelda from the era of Breath of the Wild is often not able to single-handedly wipe out enemies all by herself. Likely, this is because of her inexperience with her powers, as the Calamity seems like it wouldn't have been nearly as much trouble if Zelda had awakened and trained with her powers before the Calamity arose. This is more of a tangent than an actual part of the theory, but this leads to some interesting questions about how they're going to handle Zelda's powers in the sequel to Breath of the Wild. Based on the trailer alone, it seems they're going to simply remove her for most of the game, so that she doesn't cause plot inconvenience. But it would certainly be interesting to see her utilize her powers throughout the game. Anyway, back to the main point of the video. Zelda's life force is a topic that has been subtly hinted at in most Zelda games, and even outright talked about in some. This force is the driving force, no pun intended, behind the majority of Zelda games. It will be interesting to see how it is utilized in the future.
Thank you so much for making it to the end of the video, and huge thanks to Z Hyrule Fantasy for joining me on this theory. Once again, be sure to check out the other half of the collab on his channel. This video was really fun to make, especially since it's been a while since I made a proper Zelda theory. If you enjoyed the video, then be sure to hit the like button, and if you really liked it, feel free to subscribe. I'll have my socials linked down below, so be sure to follow me on those. That's all I have for you guys today, so until next time, I've been Truth First, and I'm out.